At its simplest, woven cloth is a crisscrossing of threads at 90 degrees to each other. In one direction the threads are named the warp, and in the other the weft. However, different patterns can be made by varying the sequence in which the threads are crossed. So let's start at the beginning. This is the warp mill. Reels of yarn are arranged so they can be gathered together and wound onto the mill. The weaver winds measured lengths of yarn onto the mill. This will be the same length as the finished cloth he wants to produce. He builds up the warp in sections until he has the width of the cloth he is to weave. Every turn of the mill measures 7 yards of yarn. A counter shows the length of yarn wound on. When he has fully built his warp, it is wound onto this roller called a warping beam, ready to be transferred onto the loom. Once it is loaded onto the loom, the weaver has the laborious task of threading each individual length of yarn through a wire loop in a frame called a heddle. The heddles are lifted and lowered to create the crisscrossing of the yarns. For a simple cloth, only 2 heddles will be required, but to make this pattern, a more complicated arrangement is necessary. The heddles are operated in sequence by a system of levers. These are controlled by the pattern chain, which has been built up by the weaver to suit the pattern, then fitted onto the machine. Note the larger diameter discs in the chain, which control the rise and fall of the heddles. We've seen how the warp has been loaded onto the machine. Now let's see how the other part of the cloth, the weft, is added. Yarn is wound onto a bobbin and threaded into a shuttle. When the loom starts, the shuttle is catapulted from its holder, across the loom and into the holder on the other side, leaving a length of yarn behind it. The rocking motion of the weaving reed first leaves a gap for the shuttle to cross the warp on its back motion, then pushes the weft into place on its forward motion. As it returns, the heddles change the pattern of the yarn and the shuttle is fired back across again. As the weaving progresses, the yarn unwinds from the warp beam and the finished material is wound onto a second roller called the cloth beam.